Monday Fun Day.
I think we were gonna do a basketball show, but it seems like in the pre-show we just should talk about football, right? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, I really don't care. Either way, it's fine.
Yeah, I watched some football yesterday. There was a large game. I always get a kick out of the fact that no advertisers can say Super Bowl because it's copyrighted and trademarked.
Really?
So I watched the big game yesterday, and I watched it with my daughter. She's 4 years old. She loves watching football because it's like there's two colors and there's people running around and they're falling. So she laughs. And she just says like, uh-oh. And it's just adorable. So we allowed her to watch like the first quarter of the game last night. And she was rooting for the red team. They didn't do so well.
I was doing the same thing.
You were rooting for the Chiefs, Henry?
Yeah, hell yeah.
I don't remember who was wearing what color. I really don't. So I guess Tampa was wearing white.
Did one of the teams have an old doper Trump supporter? Yeah, I wasn't rooting for that team. Yeah.
No, I get it. Yeah, I don't really care about him
Go
either. Go ahead.
It was cool to watch. I mean, the flyover. My daughter just loved it. She's like, "Look, they're planes! Like, look at them!" And it's like, yeah. So I have to like pause these conversations that are happening in my head about like the blending of sport and military and patriotism and all that. And I realized she's just a 4-year-old who gets a real kick out of watching planes fly.
That's how they get you, Tom. Next thing you know, football's America.
Yeah.
I don't know. Gerard's in all caps, but I have lots of thoughts I'll share with you. Judy, so I was at Judy's house, and Judy will tell you that as the game began, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but like I was basically like couldn't even watch them in the kitchen with just like this is not unifying the part of America that I'm in. Like I'm feeling very activated by freaking slapping in Amanda Gorman so that we'll have a check box, like, you know, America's unified. Don't worry, there was an insurrection. Go Trump fans! Like I just felt like totally like okay, but let's not talk about that. We slapped each other in the face. I probably won. Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, maybe we should start with, I would like to start, please, with Giannis, I think, had a slightly better bit of wordplay than LeBron. What do you think?
I don't know. Let's see it. I didn't see it.
Okay.
LeBron last night had a tweet. Giannis had a tweet about the game. And I just got to say that Giannis brought it. I think Giannis wins this battle royale of dad jokes.
I heard Shakira and J-Lo are not performing because it's the weekend. They don't work on Sunday. LeBron said,
by the way, had a child in the past years. Self-evident by that tweet that he is a father. Yep.
I don't know how it works, but it's perfect math. If you have a child, you think that's funny.
Yeah. And then LeBron just tweets out Tampa Bay.
That was that actually was a conversation apparently between maybe the Buccaneer GM and the mayor of Tampa, who scolded Tom for going maskless and then going into when we were on lockdown, I guess sometime in the spring, and he went to a park, and the mayor, I guess, made some kind of joke about, I don't know what it was. Win a Super Bowl, we'll call it Tampa Bay, whatever. I didn't know about that until the game, but I like Champa Bay, considering we have the Lightning, the Rays made the World Series. Those teams are expertly run, brilliantly run teams. The Bucks, well, they were terrible for a long time, and they got one amazing player like LeBron, and were able to attract a bunch of other really good players. I think their coach actually is pretty good. Apparently, he's an old guy, and actually a pretty liberal guy, I think, compared to for the NFL anyway. Actually hires black people to run his teams and women to coach, not 1-2 of them. So I didn't even know that because I don't follow the team at all anymore. And the game was 20 minutes from my house. But I'm glad that he did something there. And maybe that'll remind some other teams or show some of the teams you actually can hire women and have black people run your teams and actually still win.
I'm going to withhold judgment until we hear from Gerard.
Yeah. Well, it's just one time, one team, but it does help to have when you have the best player of all time, even though he's not the best now.
Yeah.
Everyone believes like that's the one thing I did pay attention. I didn't watch any pregame. My wife and I turned it on 11 seconds before kickoff, but you could hear the vibe that The players just think with Tom Brady, just like with LeBron last year, you think you got a shot, and it matters. Every day it matters.
How did you feel, Tom? How did you feel as the Super Bowl as symbol of American unity with your daughter and the Bombers?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, there was like Doritos commercials with Matthew McConaughey and Will Ferrell commercials talking about how American exceptionalism just don't even recognize that Sweden and Norway could be two different places. I mean, all the jokes seem to be in on.
Oh yeah,
the fact that we're just a bunch of slobs, and it's just we're couch potatoes who like to. I ate wings yesterday. I grilled some wings. It was delicious. I had a beer or two. And it's a weird feeling because you want to return to normalcy, whatever that is, even though you realize that the country has changed and we might not ever get back to normal. And I think about my mom and my parents who are trying to get a vaccine and they're over 70 years old. And you're just watching this and feeling like, oh man, this feels kind of dirty. Is we're watching a bunch of people, like men, just bash their brains against each other. And this happens to be the most American thing. The Super Bowl, how many things are more American than the Super Bowl? How many people watch the Super Bowl compared to watch, I don't know, election night or whatever like unifying thing? I can't imagine there's something that's more identifiable with America around the world than what we watched last night.
No, it's super true. It's inarguable. There was a moment where I felt like the NFL was nervous that we're going to be like, you guys are no good at this. You're bad at coronavirus. You're bad at racism. You're bad at Trump, right? And so as defense against that, they had like a lot of like things installed, right? One of them was like, you just celebrate the healthcare workers, right? You plug in a bunch of healthcare workers. And so, but that culminates in like, here's an actual healthcare worker in a mask, right? Calling the coin toss, right? But like, unfortunately, she was being yelled at by a maskless man, right? He was like, I call that thing. This one says this. I can see her being like, she's probably had the vaccine. I'm like, I think if you listen to most people who work in hospital now, they're like, please wear your mask, right? That's what you can do. That's how you honor us, not with a fucking video. Like honor us with your mask. Like,
well, on top of that, did you see what Bomani Jones tweeted about the racism, the end racism tag on the field?
Yeah.
So last night, Bomani Jones from ESPN, he tweeted out, I'm paraphrasing here. It's a funny thing to watch people doing the chop in the audience while there's an end racism thing on the field, and the juxtaposition of all of this, the fact that like, hey, go healthcare. Like when the owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the first thing he says when he receives the Super Bowl trophy is like, this is for the healthcare workers who have done more than any of us could imagine. And you're watching, you're like, yeah, this is weird. What we're doing here is like, there's 25,000 people in attendance in a pandemic. And from what I gather, some of them are vaccinated. Some of them, I guess, I hope all of them tested negative before they were able to go, but still, it just seems like we just jammed this Super Bowl right through.
Like we were doing it, right? Like it may or may not have been like safe, right? But I also noticed like, was there any commercials of people in masks? Like the America portrayed even in like, the Miracle Grow commercial is just like, as if there had never been a pandemic. Like every commercial is just like, well, of course the normal thing is just like, it's like, no, I think we need to celebrate like the actual world we live in, not the fantasy one that Tom Brady lives in, right?
But commercials aren't about reality. They're about like projecting images of what we hope life is, or like we can put aside the harsh realities of life. And then I'm not looking for commercials to be like my moral compass here, Henry.
No, I'm not looking at my moral compass. And this is where I'm doing a bad job at staying off this topic, but like, no. But when you have a game where nobody's in a mask, and an audience where it's like 40%, a lot of dick noses, all this kind of stuff, right? And then you have commercials where every single commercial is just like, happy restaurant life, we're at work close together, we're leaning over a document together. Like the total message of that to your daughter is pretty strong, right? That like these people who are fussy about their masks are a little bit persnickety, right? They're a little bit like, whereas we actually need to celebrate the heroes who are good at this now, right? It's kind of important, and like we're like got heroes everywhere, but not for the things that actually save lives. Like feels a little like, imagine if they'd had a pre-roll ad about how great it is to wear your mask, right? Imagine if that had been one of their little PSAs. Like,
let me
a good topic.
Let me throw this one simple.
Off, right?
let me throw this one simple thought out there.
Yeah.
Until about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe I'm off by just a couple of years, maybe 7 or 8 years, they were still doing advertisements on television about how bad smoking was for you. Okay? Because not everyone was convinced.
Yeah.
They were still doing studies. Seinfeld has some jokes about it. Like, they're still studying this, right? So there's zero chance this fucking dumbass country is going to know mask. They're still fighting the whole mask thing right now on Twitter. Right now.
Right.
They're still telling people like me that in some counties in Florida, where everyone's going to restaurants and groceries with no mask, they have the same COVID count positives as,
Right.
lockdown cities. I don't even bother anymore. I literally don't even bother. 20 years from now, they'll still be debating this stupid thing like they were for cigarettes for 50 years. The only thing I will say positive about my dumbass state, because of our dumbass governor, is you can go to your local Publix, which we've all talked about Publix. I went the other day for one item and I could not have gotten the vaccine because I'm still 55, soon to be 56, but I ain't 65. But if you were 65, you could sign up right there and get your vaccine. Oh, cool. Just show an ID.
Cool.
I thank goodness for that. I was actually thinking, I don't know if your mom, if you can get her down here, but I have friends who are bringing their parents down to Florida. Judy even talked about it, just to go to Publix. Every Publix now is doing vaccines.
She's got an appointment on Thursday. We got the word like an hour ago, which is awesome.
Did you have to do crazy hijinks to bring that up? Like,
my father texted the family and said, it's a long story, but we have an appointment on Thursday. And I'm like, it should be a short story. Is I went and I called and I got an appointment, and so, but yes, that was very good news to receive this morning. And I will say, Henry, you're making me out to be a much better father than I am, is that I'm sitting my daughter on the couch to learn about life watching this game.
How did you feel about the first quarter, daughter?
Yeah. I literally introduced my daughter to the concept of gambling last night because my wife was like, we should just because I don't know what's going on the TV. We should play Super Bowl squares.
Yeah.
And that's just basically you pick 100 squares and then you randomly assign both axes with numbers and whatever the final digit of the home team versus the away team. Then whoever wins the first quarter score gets a prize. You win money. But in our household, the currency is candy. So the universal currency for my daughter, she understands if I win, I get a prize. I get candy. So we played Super Bowl squares where my 1-year-old daughter, we did a proxy of 10 squares that she got. And then Madeline got 20 and my wife got 20 and I got 20. Somehow it added up to 100 squares. And then I was like, man, that is pretty horrible parenting that I'm introducing my 4-year-old to gambling.
No, well, I can't judge. So when I didn't think about telling this story today, but when I was 12, I went to stay with my grandfather, who was a soldier in World War II and had certain affection for poker and all of the poker games. This was how they got through World War II. He was literally on the front lines doing crazy stuff. And but he was an English soldier attached to an American company, and their common thing was poker. They played poker every version of poker. So now I was 12. He's baseball, 7-card, draw, all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know any of these things, right? And maybe this will get somebody in trouble, but the fact is 15 minutes in, he's like, you can't do this without whiskey. We literally had whiskey and poker until 2 a.m. when I was 12. And that's England for you. So I think your candy thing's fine. That's good. Yeah, no problem.
She didn't remember this morning when I was like, hey, did you have fun last night? She's like, yeah, I was waiting for her to be like, yeah, but who won the fourth quarter square? She didn't remember any of it. So mommy got all the candy.
So you didn't teach your gambling addiction yet, just gambling.
Yeah. So go Bucks. Congratulations to Tom Brady. I think the proxy here is LeBron James. I think by attaching his name to Tom Brady, he's essentially, this is what LeBron does, is he's not shy about, blowing himself up on social media and just sheesh, year 17, hashtag year 17. But by attaching all of the praise to Tom Brady, I think he is in a subversive way trying to get people to understand, I'm doing the same thing in this sport over here that he's doing over there. So lavish him with praise, but also do to me too.
He did a whole barbershop episode about this that I happened to see. This is a year or two ago. where he's basically like they're like, who's the greatest athlete in the history of sports? And a lot of consensus in the room, I don't remember LeBron saying this, was that it was Tom Brady because he was throwing at unathletic white receivers. It was like, this is literally like what they're saying. And then LeBron joins in with basically like, no, like he's like, Tom Brady is epic, but he only plays on one side of the ball.
Yes.
This is LeBron's big thing. Basically, he's like, I'm playing on both sides of the ball. And even his friends are like, yeah, whatever. Tom Brady's still better.
All right. So I shared the graphic with you guys this morning, but when we talk about finals MVP or Super Bowl MVP, Tom Brady got Super Bowl MVP because he was super efficient and he's Tom Brady. But the guy didn't break a sweat because the offensive line was so good and the defense was so good. Check this out. Michael Lopez, who's one of the smartest analytics guys out there. He covers a lot on the NFL space. Here are the paths that Patrick Mahomes, the top one, Tom Brady on the bottom, took before pass attempts and shotgun during tonight's Super Bowl. I mean, look at that. It is a spaghetti bowl of soup. Like it is a bowl of spaghetti there for Patrick Mahomes, which is both impressive, but also an indictment on his offensive line because he's having to scramble away from being attacked. And then there's Tom Brady, who just looks like, I don't know, a sprinkle, a spray, a fart spray. Like what would you describe
let's connect
the bottom of that?
Let's connect this to the Warriors' first title. Henry knows how I feel about this. Those spaghetti lines you see, that was what Steph Curry had to do on offense as he got double teamed the entire game and still averaged 20-something a game. And those tiny little noodles, very, very small. That was how much Iguodala had to run in their half-court offense. He stood in the corner and took some open threes and did a terrible job guarding LeBron, but LeBron didn't average 50. He almost did, he didn't. And so they gave it to Iguodala when Steph had amazing numbers and had a run like that in every possession pretty much. And yet Iguodala got the MVP. It drove me crazy when I saw it. I'm like, who's watching this game? I said the same last night. Having really, I rooted for the Bucks for my parents. I didn't really care. The defense was the story of that game. I don't know who you'd pick. I couldn't tell you I know the two linebackers. I know two players on the Bucks defense, but that's who should have split it.
Yeah.
He scored 9 points. The Bucks had enough points in the first quarter to win the game. That wasn't Tom Brady. Brady was fine. It wasn't hard. You could quarterback them pretty close. Their defense did all the work, but yeah, that bothered me.
I'll tell you this though. I went down to the basement of whatever building it was at ESPN where they made the QBR rating, right? When Dean Oliver worked there and Connie, they worked really, really hard on that. Really smart people. And they look a common good check of your assessment like this is to put dollar values on everything, right? So they basically like, a win is worth this, and then you can give dollars to different activities within the win. It's like a one way to check your work. And Tom could talk way more about it than I can. But they were like, here's the problem. Like in the early versions of it, when they were doing, they felt a pretty accurate assessment of the best quarterbacks in the league. They were like, we're finding that, like, I forget, it was maybe Peyton Manning at that time was the best. They were like, we're finding that Peyton Manning is worth $500 million a year.
Jeez.
Like, the way the sport goes, like the court, I mean, I don't know anything about football, but they were like, we're finding that, I guess Tom Brady going to Tampa and then winning a Super Bowl would be pretty good evidence too. But we're finding like it actually means way more than any position in sports.
Without question, yeah. I mean, Bill Belichick said the same thing. You spend all your money on the quarterback for a reason. Yeah, I believe in that. All right, let's talk hoops.
Do you believe, Coach? Like when LeBron plays basketball, he's playing both ends of the floor for 45 of the 48 minutes in a finals game. Whereas Tom Brady is sitting on the sideline cheering on his team when that was...
Or just sitting there doing nothing. Or just sitting doing nothing. He didn't know he's...
You know, I just have a tough time giving the...
Cheering, just sits there sometimes.
Yeah. Like I just look at Tom Brady. I'm like, he's on the field impacting the game. What, like 45%, maybe 45% of the game?
The odds, the stats say pay the quarterback, and if you don't have a good quarterback, you're fucked.
It's such a weird, it's such a weird sport that there are 55 players on the roster, right? And really only one makes decisions, right?
Yeah.
There's the defense, the guy who runs the defense, the middle linebacker typically. The defense is making a lot of calls. I've listened to basketball coaches give clinics. These are very famous coaches like Dr. Tom Davis from Iowa, who got his start in football. And he would say, compared to that sport, our sport is simple. We have 10 dudes, and there's not a lot of specialization, especially back then. It's very, very complicated for sure. But yes, Henry, of course you're right. In generally speaking, and I think to the Buccaneer coach's credit, he let his offensive defense coordinator run the shows, and then he let Tom Brady. I think Belichick, I don't really follow football, but apparently this guy gave Brady a lot more control of the offense than he had prior. And it worked. They ended up being a pretty amazing team. Empowering players is never a bad idea, in my opinion. Even a young one. Speaking of empowering players, because I'm done talking football, how about what De'Aaron Fox is doing? He's an all-star in Sacramento. And it started with your boy.
Move, your big move to get us away from the Super Bowl is the Sacramento Kings?
It started with Amin.
Yeah,
tell me if I'm wrong, because I don't follow Twitter that much. And then Amin say something like John Morant is the player De'Aaron Fox thinks he is, something like that.
Yes.
And Henry knows where I'm going with this. We talked about Damian Lillard recently and how Lillard's high school coach laughed at him at the idea he could make the NBA, and that clicked in Lillard's mind, and he said, "I turned militant, out-trained everyone, outworked whatever." No one's ever denied Fox's talent. I've talked to his teammates who are blown away with his talent, but his lack of assertiveness, Amin wasn't wrong, right? But that changed him, and all of a sudden he's destroying the league, and they're one of the hottest teams in basketball now.
Yeah, Amin and I did a show right after that, and they had a back and forth multiple times on social media where De'Aaron Fox was saying essentially like, "I don't pay attention to clowns," and yet he was tweeting about that clown. So he was literally paying attention to what Amin was saying. And Amin, like this happens a lot, is when you go on a show like this one and you say something that's probably out of context, like a real shot at someone else. And that's what happened here, is that Amin Elhassan they were doing, Rachel Nichols and Fizz or whoever it was on the panel were watching a Ja Morant highlight, and out of the blue, "Hey, Amin, what'd you think about that highlight?" Ja Morant is who De'Aaron Fox thinks he is.
Yeah.
And that got clipped and then sent to Cowbell Kingdom, which ran it on their social and tagged De'Aaron Fox in the post, in the caption. And of course, De'Aaron Fox sees this and then, responds, and they go back and forth. And Amin's whole thing that we discussed on the pod was, "I want to see you guys win. Like, you could talk all about how Ja Morant's not better than me, and that it's a slight to compare me to Ja Morant, who's a second-year player." By the way, I wonder what Ja Morant is thinking through all this. Like,
they're doing good too. They're doing good. Well, they're doing well
right.
too.
And so Amin's point was, we do this every year with the Kings. Is like they have a good stretch for like 10 games and we get excited about them, and De'Aaron Fox is back. He might get hurt, which no one wants to see, but like there's always these things that hurt their progress, and then it's just the Kings are the Kings again. And so Amin his point is like, let's talk in April. Let's see where you're at in April. And you know what? Since that whole back and forth, they've played really good basketball. Their defense sucks. Their defense is awful. But in the same way that the Brooklyn Nets can have a terrible defense, as long as they bring it offensively, they can win and be competitive in this league. And you're seeing the Kings with De'Aaron Fox running in transition. And I hated what Luke Walton did after taking over for Yeager, where they were just running teams out of the gym. And then Luke Walton slowed everything down, and then they didn't have that same identity. And it's like giving, trying to win a race, an off-roading competition with a Ferrari. It's like, right. No, you're not. Why don't you just do really fast, go fast? You're not going to win the off-roading competition with a Ferrari. And that's what De'Aaron Fox is. He is a Ferrari that needs to be running.
David, you've been so like you used to use the Kings as a generic stand-in term for a poorly run franchise, and we've been doing that for years. Like, has anything should we stop using that team? Is there a different team we should use?
I don't know that they're doing anything great. Honestly, they've done two things really well. They drafted De'Aaron Fox, wasn't rocket science. And you know who's having a secretly great season is Harrison Barnes.
Yeah.
Look him up at dunksandthrees.com.
Yeah.
He's a really good basketball player. He's not elite. He's very, very good. And I don't know if he is playing beyond what they expected. I've never been a Luke Walton fan. I think Tom is right. With De'Aaron Fox, you should be doing a lot of 100-yard sprints and not do a bunch of 800-meter dashes, right? Like fast all the time. It's funny too, Tom, when you talk about the Amin thing. Ben Bradley has a great story. It's in the All the President's Men movie, where he published a story that Hoover was getting fired from President Johnson. And then the next day, President Johnson named Hoover FBI director for life. And then he literally said, tell Ben Bradley, fuck you. Sometimes that shit happens, right? It's a fluid world. Like, just, Amin wasn't wrong. Fox was not consistent and they were not winning. Now he's consistently killing it, but it's a couple weeks, right? Let's see what I always say, Henry, is the Kings will find a way to fuck it up. It doesn't mean it's not the name of its franchise, it's the people. And people keep changing. We can hope for better, right? We can hope for better, but I wouldn't get too excited, other than Fox is an all-star right now, and that's exciting. It's nice to see some new blood. He's a super talented player.
Would they, like, in your heart of hearts, if Amin hadn't said that, is De'Aaron Fox going to be an all-star this year?
Probably not. I think
Wow.
he'd fuck up.
Amin, you're saying Amin should get a cut of his all-star.
No, I'm just saying no one was taking. Henry talked about this all the time. You can't be afraid to write or speak the truth. I don't think Amin should have said it the way he said it. That's a separate thing. I don't like taking shots that way on people, but Amin likes doing that. It fucking clicked. Like, players sometimes need to be told in their face, you are not doing a good job. And a lot of coaches are afraid to do that. Luke being one of them. Luke is not a guy that's in your face. There's a lot of passive-aggressive bullshit that happens. Someone had to wake him the fuck up. Well, guess what? He's wide awake. And he's crushing it. It's not easy to keep doing it, though. That's the hard part. It's way easier to do what he's doing now because he's very talented and super athletic. But as teams start scouting you up and preparing for you differently for what you're doing, you got to keep bringing it and finding new ways. You can't just keep doing what you always do and be successful in this league. You've got to find new ways. We'll see how he does.
Well, I remember sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Finish that thought because I wanted to talk about another team.
Well, just really fast. It really struck me. I was pretty new at ESPN. I forget the year, but John Hollinger wrote a story that, like, Derrick Rose is a promising young guard, but he never draws fouls. And then Derrick was like, basically, I don't know what John Hollinger is, but I guess I got to work on this. And, like, literally started drawing fouls like the next day and became an MVP. Like, it doesn't usually happen, but once in a while, the media has this kind of effect, I guess.
And we need to circle back on Derrick Rose, but go ahead, Tom.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the standings, Henry. You mentioned that usually around this time of year, in a normal season, so around Christmas time, just January, the season standings are essentially plateauing, where it's just like lots of crazy stuff happens, and then suddenly that little metronome starts getting a little flatter, and then the standings essentially after 20 or so games become more or less what you see in April. So I'm looking at the standings and I see the Sacramento Kings there tied for the 8th spot in the Western Conference with the Golden State Warriors. And in my head, I'm like, man, if there's a 7-game series, I'm picking the Warriors every time. But if Steph plays the way he did over the weekend, and by the way he did over the weekend, what I mean is, you need amplifiers on your team. Steve Kerr calls Andre Iguodala the greatest amplifier of all time. What he means by that is you need to play with players like Andre Iguodala who take your great thing that you do and make it epic. He takes everyone's best skill or everyone's mediocre skill and just kicks it up like 20% just by being there and being a smart player and amplifying what others around you do better. He's like throwing a dash of salt on some vegetables. It's like the vegetables are good, but you throw some salt in there and some olive oil, like you need those amplifiers. Kent Bazemore is the amplifier for Stephen Curry. And I am arguing for the fact that Kelly Oubre needs to go to the bench, try to build up his confidence. Kent Bazemore, Steph Curry's like best friend in the world. Like, forget basketball. Like, Kent Bazemore is one of his good friends, is also an amplifier for what Stephen Curry needs, which is the ball in his hands. Reminds me in high school, I was not good at basketball, but I knew I like to think I was fairly smart on the court. I knew that my job on the basketball court was to get the best player on the floor of the ball.
Yeah.
And the best player on the floor was 6'8". He was all Ivy League basketball player, Columbia. He just dominated everybody. But I knew my job on the floor was to get that post guy the ball. And I've been playing with him since I was 5 years old. And I always knew where he'd like the ball, where to pass it. And I thought of myself as an amplifier. Kelly Oubre is not an amplifier. I don't think he amplifies the things that Steph Curry does. And in fact, when you look at the usage rate of Stephen Curry when he's on the floor with Kelly Oubre, it is way lower. It's I think the lowest of any teammate. When Stephen Curry plays with Kelly Oubre, he just doesn't shoot the ball. He doesn't get the ball. When he plays with Kent Bazemore, his buddy, suddenly Stephen Curry's usage rate goes through the roof. And I think it's just, he has his chemistry with Kent Bazemore where he knows, like, my job on the floor is to get Stephen Curry the ball and let him do his thing. And he scores 57 points. I think Kelly Oubre should be moved to the bench. Kent Bazemore moved to the starting lineup. Not because I think Kent Bazemore is this amazing player, but he makes the star a superstar. And that's why I think he should be starting.
And it's better for Bazemore just to be free to go but get buckets.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah. I don't think
Bazemore or Oubre?
I mean, Oubre,
Oh,
I'm sorry. Oubre. Yeah. It gives Oubre that freedom in the second unit when Curry's not on the court. Like, Jordan Clarkson cannot start for the Jazz because he's the only guy that's shooting pretty much when he's on the court. And he's the sixth man of the year going away. But to your great point, Tom, about the amplifier, Joe Ingles is probably the amplifier of the year, although I haven't looked at the advanced metrics. When Joe Ingles is on the court, he is trying to get the best shot. And sometimes it's him, right? He's the slowest primary ball handler probably of all time, literally. I'm not even kidding about that. But
there's got to be somebody slower.
I've never seen one slower than him. He had a bucket. I'm gonna find it and send it to you guys. He had like a little floater. He went from like just the 3-point line to maybe 8 feet. It took like a day and a half. I was laughing and no one guarded him. Like, how was no one getting there? But the problem is, as he's slowly crawling to the rim, he's always ready to kick. And all they have are shooters on the court.
Yeah.
All the time. Or the dunk spot guy, right? Gobert Favors. And so you're afraid to leave because he's going to make the right read. Iguodala is way better than Ingles defensively, but Andre played the same way with the ball. And I think Tom's point, someone taught you well, young man, because that's exactly what I taught my 6th grade son when he played his first like high-level AAU.
Tom's like 5th grade, would you say?
No. My son was 6th grade. He was the tiniest guy in the court, and we had one of the best players in the country. Yeah. And who was a neighbor of ours. And I'm like, when in doubt, throw the ball to Christian.
Yeah.
He's now playing in college. You can't. And then my son ended up starting because he can't get the ball to our best player. Everyone else is thinking score. He was thinking, I want us to score, and I can't be the one doing it. He can.
I started every game of my senior year in basketball. I shot 0 for 1 from the free throw line.
But you didn't take a shot all year?
No, free throw.
Think about how non-attacking, non-talented yet slashing, like not even a threat.
That's not how it went in the media game, my man.
All right, so what do you guys make of Derrick Rose and the Knicks? Were you surprised? Was it really a big surprise? Although it was never been written about.
I will tell you that what I thought about very first and foremost was where did Derrick Rose grow up? I'm blanking on this. Chicago, right?
Chicago, yeah.
Okay. Derrick Rose grew up in Chicago, but took his SATs in Detroit. And this is not news. This has been written about. This was a little controversy when he was in college. But like, what was in Detroit? Like, well, William Wesley lives in Detroit.
Who's William Wesley, Henry?
The mother of William Wesley's children was a teacher in Detroit. There's something, there was a family thing. There are articles about this. Don't take my word for it. But like, the point is, Derrick Rose and William Wesley, who runs the Knicks now, go way back in a way that I don't think is creepy at all. Like, I think it's beautiful. I think they really love each other. But like this is not, William Wesley was Tom Thibodeau's agent, right? Like, and he's been a key figure in Derrick Rose's life since the 1840s. Like, it's not weird at all that at this stage of his career, they would make some effort to pull together.
I think other teams looking for one more score off the bench are hurt by this.
Mhm.
Like, I think he could have helped another team more than the Knicks. What are the Knicks? What's it going to mean to the Knicks? Another win or two, maybe? At no expense. The Knicks didn't do a terrible thing, I don't think, other than if it hurts Quickly's development.
Yeah, that's what you worry is like, did Zach LaVine progress with Derrick Rose at point guard or whoever it is that the prospect that was in waiting in Minnesota by virtue of Derrick Rose being there?
Yeah.
Did that stunt their growth? I'll make another connection here, Henry, is here's a list of players that played for John Calipari, who is a William Leslie guy as well. That they now have Derrick Rose, Julius Randle, Emmanuel Quickly, Kevin Knox, Nerlens Noel, who's no longer with the team, but so Nerlens, Derrick Rose. There's like 6 players on the Knicks that played for. Kevin Knox that played for Calipari. And then you throw in the fact that, did I see this coming? Well, when they signed Taj Gibson, earlier this season, and it was like, oh, he's getting the band back together. So I know that Joakim Noah and Coach, you might have more sources than I do on this front, but I think it's only a matter of time before we see Joakim in New York. I mean, it's just like it's a match made in heaven.
I'm waiting for them to sign Chris Douglas Roberts.
CDR?
Yes, CDR played from Memphis.
That's true.
Michael Kidd Gilchrist. They're like all these people were West people who like got to go play for Calipari later, right? Like they're West people first, right? Like that's how Calipari got players, right? Was starting some of these things.
But why? So listen, I think Henry has said this to me early on. Like the guys who are in the Knicks now are not stupid.
No.
They're not stupid. So okay. So then why are you signing Derrick Rose? Let's even argue that he can help them win a game or two, and they want to do that, whatever the number is. If you're Derrick Rose, is this really where you want to be on that team in this stage of his career? When he could be someone's 8th or 9th man that's got a chance to win a championship? That's a fair question for me.
There have been a fair number of these things now where it's like tired of the bullshit, right? Like I think that a regular player on a regular NBA team is just like aghast at his bosses, right? And I think if you're like, no, you come in here, your boss is a guy you've known since you were 10, and you know he's a straight shooter, and they have very little drama. These people in this West Circle, they're not getting at DUIs. They're not skipping practice, right? Like there's a reason Tom Thibodeau is the coach of this team, right? They're the OCD workers, right? They're
it's a great point.
Very satisfying to be like I just don't have to listen to some clown running practice who's going to be gone next year anyway, and then he's responsible to an owner who's an idiot, blah blah. And they're basically saying, "I got you. Like we're going to come in here and we're going to do this." And I think there's a little bit of a do you guys remember how upset Carmelo was when Jeremy Lin was like a thing, right? That's because Carmelo had a vision of making a family like LeBron did in Miami, where it's like, we're going to have our people and we're going to treat each other a certain way, and we're not going to be subjected to Dan Gilbert, right? Like we're going to have a more central role in how things go, right? And Jeremy Lin was a giant departure from that, because when everyone in Nickdom loved him first, it meant Carmelo didn't get to be the patriarch, right?
Yeah.
I think this is like, if you think of your Derrick Rose, you're like, no, I get to be like, I mean, honestly, the analogy is Carmelo and Portland, right? Like 2 NBA players, Portland's now a much more desirable place because it has the big check of approval of like Carmelo, Damian, and CJ are like, have a little bit of this family thing going where they like each other and they trust each other and they're protected from some of the BS of other teams. I think that's what's happening here, is like Derrick Rose gets to be influential, not just a player.
That's okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. What do you think, Tom?
Actual pensive.
Yeah. Tom's brain is processing. processing.
Does this help or hurt RJ Barrett? Because I think if you're the Knicks, your priority should be developing your young talent, future of the franchise pillars. RJ Barrett appears to be that player, number 3 pick in 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It goes Zion, Ja Morant, and then him. So how does this coach, in your opinion, impact, let's say, in this hypothetical, Derrick Rose just steals Elfrid Payton's minutes. Elfrid Payton is gone. Like he's not starter anymore, and Elfrid Payton is kicked to the curb, and it's Derrick Rose's starter minutes. Maybe he's coming off the bench. I don't know. But in my world, I'm thinking if I'm making a deal for Derrick Rose, I'm handing him the keys because I got Elfrid Payton as my point guard, who's a different player than Derrick Rose. So what does that mean for RJ Barrett and the future of his development for your team?
If he's managed right, then they're fine. You're not the only one asking. Just quickly, take the starting spot from Elfrid Payton, who's a more consistent player. Quickly's got more upside and also more downside. He's a rookie, right? Yeah. If Derrick is just the calming guy coming off the bench, get your points. He played better last year. Derrick Rose is very good last year. That has not been the case so far this year, although the team he was on, is struggling. They're young and not very good. Although I love the Pistons. They're like one of the hardest playing teams in the league. I love watching them play. They have a lot of good players. RJ can be fine. RJ has a lot of work he still has to do. You've got to give him oxygen. I'm not someone who believes, and we're going to talk about LaMelo a little bit. I think the coach of the year is James Borrego, one of the coaches of the year at this point. We'll weed him out, but he's on the list right now. And I think they've managed LaMelo extraordinarily well. They've given him responsibility, but not all of it, because I think all of it would crush him down. And we would still see a great offensive number. He's a very talented offensive player. His defensive numbers, which are bad now, very bad, will be worse. And I think they needed to teach LaMelo actually how to win games. You can do that with RJ and not just give him everything. But I also like last year, if you remember, David Griffin wanted to try to win around a youth movement. Keep Drew, get Zion. And I love that because I think trying to win games while you're developing is a force multiplier. The game should be in reference points to what you work on the next year, what you think about, what you study. You have to value winning for that to happen. And so if you're in a playoff race, you're valuing winning, which means you're locking in on what you just screwed up at. And so I think adding Derrick Rose can help that with RJ if indeed they are trying to win games. I think your point with RJ and Quickly, to win games more so than worry about development would be a step backwards for them. And they cannot afford a step backwards. It's still a team with not a lot of talent. And I'm not sure their best player is even going to be there when, in fact, you would argue he probably won't be there, Julius Randle, right? When is the trade deadline, by the way?
I thought we were having no quizzes.
No, I figured Tom knows everything at the top of his head.
Tom knows everything.
For a year.
What do you think? I was muted because they're literally chopping down a tree 40 feet from this.
I don't hear it.
Here. Chainsaw.
March 25th. Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be in March, but I think a lot of this is kind of in the air. Is like what is going to happen with trade deadline, All-Star, all this stuff is it's coming up here. But like Julius Randle is having an amazing season. Emmanuel Quickly, amazing rookie season. Derrick Rose comes into the picture, and you start to wonder, is the goal for this Knicks team to get to 500? Because they're 11-14, and I think they're trying to convince themselves that they can win this year. And that's Tom Thibodeau. Like, Tom Thibodeau is not known for his long-term development. He is a guy who's like, I'm going to instill these principles today, and we are going to establish them today and win games with these tomorrow. And I just don't see him having the foresight to be like, we're going to take lumps this season. We're going to be a 300 team, not a 500 team. And we're just going to make sure that Quickly and RJ Barrett and the rest of the prospects develop and become great NBA players in year 5. I just don't see that happening.
That sounds very sensible to me, but I was amazed they didn't use their cap space. Like, they have a ton of room and
they have a deal coming. Like, that's what I'm asking, guys. Derrick Rose can be traded again. Tell me if I'm wrong, Tom. But I think he can still be traded one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's time, right? You can't trade him tomorrow.
Yep.
A deal with Randle and Derrick Rose would not surprise me one bit near that deadline. And if they're smart, they use that cap space to help someone else do a monster deal and get more picks thrown in. They can take a bad player in the mix to make a deal work and get more picks because of it.
It could be, but I'll bet against it. I just don't think you get the guy you've known since he was 10 years old or whatever, when William Weston met Derrick Rose, to just kick in the deal a month later.
No. For Derrick Rose, it would be sending him to a contender where he has a chance to be a rotation player for a contender. And I agree with you, Henry. Derrick would have to say, no, I'm good with that. He might even say Knicks would be smart if they grabbed Derrick Rose for a second-round pick and then moved him to get even a better deal later on when he's.
No, I mean, it's all possible. But I'm just saying that, like, when you've received, like, let's say you get 4 years of phone calls from your son at college about how much he hates college, and then you finally bring him home, like, you don't kick him back out right away, right? You're solving the problem by bringing him home, right? That's to me, this feels like bring it in, right? This feels like I just think it would be extremely, I'm not inside these conversations, but like, I will personally bet that they are keeping Derrick Rose for forever.
Yeah. What if they're selling high, quote unquote, on Quickly and trading him in part of a package for like John Wall?
Okay, interesting.
Could be.
Gerard, wow, time is flying. I know Gerard was at all caps for most of the first half of the show. There's gonna be stuff that's happening here.
Yeah, let's get him on.
Gerard, you're all caps today, my man.
I was just yelling about silly ass football. That's all. It's fine.
Did you watch Gerard?
I watched a little bit of it. I mainly watched the beginnings. I wanted to see her and Amanda Gorman,
Oh, how was she? I didn't see.
Oh, I mean, she was fine, but it was the NFL doing its thing. Like, look, we care about Black people and women and like America. No, you actually don't, but it's fine. Whatever. Is what it is.
Yeah, I posted it. Yeah.
I do want to say this thing really quick. And Coach, you hit the nail on the head that we need to really just, and I know a lot of it's just TV talk and Twitter and how do you just make things like so people can argue about shit. But like when we're really talking about the greatest athletes of all time and we're nitpicking if you want to use top 5 or if you want to use Mount Rushmore, it's only four faces on Rushmore, you have to be extremely discriminatory when you're going across all sports in the history of the world. And I'm sorry, a football quarterback is nowhere near top 4 or top 5. Just isn't. There's too many other variables involved to your point. He sits for half the game. Half the game is doing nothing, literally nothing. So, and look it up. Brady in the history of his career has always played on a very good to an elite defense based on DVOA rankings, right? So that kind of helps. Swap him and Peyton Manning in their careers. We still talking about Tom Brady as the GOAT? Probably not. So there you have it.
Wait, are you saying that Tom Brady didn't hold the Chiefs to 9 points?
You're right. Exactly. Exactly.
And handed off to Leonard Fournette a bunch more.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, you guys, I don't want to forget this. We have I think we just published it. Did you publish it, Henry? It's out. Yes. You're going to enjoy this as guys that love the game. Our guy Bilal tweeted out a clip from Chris Boucher block shot against the Nets. Gerard probably watched the game live, where he ran all the way across court to the corner, blocked the shot.
Hell of a block.
Here we go. Watch
here it is right here. Yeah.
It really is amazing, this play.
Now it's great.
It's a little bit lower than that, Judy. Oh yeah, it's
keep going.
I'm surprised it didn't show right up. Here it is. My favorite defensive position.
Bottom one.
Yeah, it says right there. Yeah. It's slow motion too. So that's Kyrie pushing the ball to Durant. Fred VanVleet closed him out. Durant makes a quick backwards trail pass. We call it to Joe Harris. Harris draws 2. The Raptors screwed up and sent 2 guys to him. Look how the Nets do it perfectly. They move the ball, but they wait for the Raptors guy to come get him first. It's perfect offense. Everyone's behind 3. Look, and Boucher blocks the shot.
Coach, would the skip pass have been better? They're skipping TLC and going straight to Jeff Green.
Well, if that would have been the case, Boucher definitely wouldn't have blocked it, but Powell would have closed him out just fine. No, the 2 guys who screwed up probably were both Durant and Irving, because each probably had a slash to the rim, and then they could have made a play. But this is, and I mentioned this, the great thing about the Nets actually is they have these 3 incredibly, absurdly good isolation scorers, but all 3 guys know how to play jazz too. All of them do. Like Irving has never been as high usage rate guy people think he would be with his ball handling skills. They move the ball beautifully. They got a great corner 3. Boucher made an amazing play. But I kind of dissect what defenses have to do now compared to the old days. And I show that the article starts with, it's actually a comical little look on what the game
Great
used to
80s
look like. This is funny. This is the highest scoring game of all time, by the way. Look where everyone is in the paint on defense. They move the ball around a 19-foot for a little contested jumper. It's such a tiny little, it's a kiddie pool. I call it the kiddie pool in the article. And now they're playing in a big damn resort pool. It's very different.
That's when Jeff Green has to do a little pump fake, right?
I mean, to be fair, it's one of the greatest 3-point shot blocks of all time.
I mean, it's crazy.
And he didn't block him at the hand. He got it. The ball was in the air, and he went and got it. He timed it up really well. But yes, you would have a little, I call it a shot fake, a little, or a freeze fake, just chest to chin, and then Boucher flies by. And Boucher took a great angle, so it's not even land. He didn't land on
basketball his whole life. He caught the ball in the corner, and I did this morning. If you analyze the video, at the moment that Jeff Green catches the ball, Chris Boucher
so far away,
100% in the paint.
Yeah,
his whole body's in the paint. And then Jeff Green does a little dip thing. He has, it takes a little longer, but you have to just shoot it, right? Like when you're never more open than that. No one would ever shoot a three if Jeff's faking that one because like he's open.
It's
like,
the defensive play of the year. If they don't give that award, they should.
And he didn't foul him. He comes at this crazy angle. And David, you mentioned that he jumped off his left foot and blocked it with his left hand. Yeah. These are things that I don't even notice. But
that's weird.
Yeah, talk to me through this. What happened there? Why is that what happened?
So it's just he had no choice. If he takes one more step of his right leg, it's too late.
Yeah.
If he does it a step too early, it's too early. The timing was perfect, and I've been lucky enough to have coached some pretty amazing athletes in my life. Some guys, Tom, will drop played some, I guess. Henry, we all jump better typically off one leg than the other. Normally, it's the foot opposite our shooting hand. So most right-handed players jump better off their left foot and vice versa, right? Drew Holiday, who has a bigger left hand than right hand, jumps better off his right leg. When I was coaching him, he dunked it much better with his left arm than his right for that reason. Because of his left hand being bigger, even though he's right-handed, he learned to jump better off his right foot. I've coached some guys when I've asked them, are you jumping better off left or right leg? Players would say things like, I'm one of those blessed few that could jump equally good off both legs, right? That's rare. Boucher is one of them, clearly. So he jumps left leg, but if he goes right-handed, it might be too late. So he sticks up his left arm and blocks it. It's incredible.
But it's still, I hear you about the timing, but it's still a choice, right? Like if I'm a long jumper or a hurdler or a whatever, like when I take my first step, the whole process is in my subconscious, right? Like I know when I take my first step approaching the high jump that I'm going to jump off my left leg, right? It's my brain has worked that out.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. He's a left-legged jumper. It's the fact that he uses his left arm too is something you just don't see very much. You might see it on a one-step closeout, not a five-step closeout.
Why did you use his left?
If you're left, it's the other arm. If you're going off your left leg, that's
I was always taught to pretend there's like a shoelace attached from your elbow to your knee, and when your elbow goes up, your knee goes up, and so when you jump, you should be going off the other leg. And this is why Steve Nash is so amazing. He used to practice before games jumping off the wrong leg to throw off the defense.
That's how we teach it now.
Yeah.
We teach Steve Nash finishes. We call them, there are different names for it. Off hand, off foot, same hand, same foot. Or if you looked at my curriculum, Steve Nash layups, Steve Nash floaters, because Nash is the one that did it off the wrong leg, right? So here's the other thing. Yeah. A lot of shot blockers can only block a shot with one arm. So I've not studied Boucher, but normally you're using your shooting hand to be your shot blocking hand. That's almost always the case. Watch Rudy Gobert. He doesn't even need his left hand on defense half the time. He's pretty much all right-handed. Boucher, I think, normally blocks shots right-handed, but in this case, he couldn't have. He wouldn't be able to get it. The left hand was closer. It reached, think about it this way. You can't see it. The left hand goes up higher in that angle. It was a breathtaking play. So, and no one ever talks about it except for this one guy, and then Bilal tweeted it. And that's why I made it as I've never seen it like it before.
There's a lot of, honestly, it's a brilliant story. And I learned a lot from it. And thank you, David. And there's another part that's like really cool, which was Norman Powell is the last defender there. So Kyrie passes it to TLC, and David makes an amazing point here. Well, do you want to talk us through it?
Well, yeah. So Irving does the quick swing when he probably could have attacked Bembry. Bembry was flat-footed. I thought Irving could have beat him. But again, Irving was trying to be a team guy. That's why the Nets have a great offense, is they're not a bunch of world beat frees out there, okay? To take an 80s reference. So TLC gets it and lets Powell close him out. If he swings it right away, Powell goes right to Green and he can't get a shot off. Watch how Calbaro times up his pass, He draws Powell to him. This is the key. He draws Powell to him, pause for a second, boom, throw it, and now it's gone.
Well, but here's the part that I wanted to get to was so TLC is not nearly the shooter that Jeff Green is. They're both good, but it's like 37 versus 44%, something like that. And Green's in the corner. So, but David's point, which I thought was really cool, was like in the playoffs, all the Raptors are going to know that Powell is going to stunt to TLC and stay with Green.
Right.
But in the regular season, that's just too much of a pain in the butt to track. Right. And so it's just shooter, not shooter. TLC qualifies as a shooter, and so he goes to TLC, which means Boucher is running to the corner. But this is the reason the playoffs are different.
Right. And you know you can't let Green get the corner shot, and if given a choice, you're going to make Haberstroh shoot it from the break. And I don't even know what he is from the break. From three, he's 37% on the year. From the break, he's probably a little below that. Yeah. But they know he's a shooter, and so that's all that's in their head right now. It changes in the playoffs when you lock it on one thing every time. You stunt and go back to Green, and you give Haberstroh the open shot. That's what
I think it also shows Boucher's IQ is that when he's rotating, he's not going to TLC. He's rotating straight to Jeff Green because he can see two chess moves ahead, and is like, that's going to be the guy that I need to rotate over to.
Well, and he messed up. He initially ran to Harris on the Durant trail pass, and he shouldn't have. He thought Siakam was gap supporting Durant. Initially, he was supporting Fred VanVleet on the wing, but Siakam was in a great spot to both guard that. This is the whole point of how the game has changed. You couldn't even gap defend back in the day. You had to stand next to your man. So Siakam runs away from Joe Harris in transition, protects the Durant drive, and then Siakam panics, seeing, oh my God, Joe Harris wide open from three. Bill Laimbeer would run right to the rim. Right? For sure, he would run right to the rim. Boucher runs to Joe Harris, but Siakam was there. So now two guys are on the ball, and now it's 3-on-2 on the other side of the floor. And I think Boucher, knowing he fucked up, he shouldn't have run to Harris. Siakam had it. He's like, oh boy, I got to do something. like a kid who got in trouble would make sure, oh, yes, sir, yes, dad. What can I do next for you? Because they messed up. Boucher, like, I'm going to make up for this, and actually blocked it. If he had just made the effort, you would have clapped. Like good makeup.
To your point, Coach,
incredible, huh?
That kind of sort of fast break play is fairly common in basketball, right? Given your point about the playoffs and regular season being different, given time and scoring situation, right? To your point, maybe in a different situation, Kyrie does attack that gap, right? He's like, oh, screw it. We got to get this point. I'm not passing anybody. Or maybe Durant pulls up there, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, they would probably attack and then they would have just kicked. But again, this is Steve Nash and maybe D'Antoni too. Guys, you're going to get all the shots you want, meaning the big three, late in games, postseason, but we need to move the ball and share the ball and play fast. And it's working. Offensively, it's working. Defensively, not so much, but that's a whole other show.
And by the way, that play 100 times out of 100 doesn't get Kevin Durant injured, doesn't get Kyrie in.
Oh, great point.
Right? Like they got a long season here, and boom, pretty easy. I can do that all season, not get hurt too.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point.
I like it, Henry. Nice.
In the last minute, Tom, is Miami figured things out a little bit? They won their last game nicely. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really just availability. They've been hit with the COVID protocols. Jimmy Butler, Goran Dragic, and Bam Adebayo, their three best players, I think by a pretty solid margin, have only played 8 games together this season. 8 out of 26 games.
That's important.
Now, the record in those games is not great, but I think in a small sample size like that, you just have to focus on the fact that they haven't had – the 3 of those guys on the floor had the best plus-minus on the team in the playoffs last year. So in that amazing Cinderella run, like Goran Dragic, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo were the 3-headed monster that got them there. And this season, they haven't been able to play or consistently on the floor. I think it's more about availability than anything systemic that's holding them back. I think once those 3 guys get back together, Jimmy Butler's back, they will be much better.
Availability is the best ability.
True.
TikTok, as Judy would say, as Legal would say.
TikTok. Okay. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, David. Thank you, Judy. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.